Hey there. Let's talk about relationship, astrology. Guys, there's so much I can talk about and I'm going to talk about. I'm a Libra rising. I have 4 planets in Libra's house. So yeah, I'm here to talk about relationships. Good, bad, not so good, painful. But let's talk about how can we have better relationships in astrology. I get asked this a lot by a lot of my clients. And one of the best ways you have your best relationships in astrology is by doing your Aries energy. So you have in astrology Libra. Libra is the ruler of the 7th house. It's all about relationships. You and me, commitments, marriage, balance, harmony. But to have the balance and harmony of Libra, which is the 7th house, you need to get your first house. You need to get your Aries energy in check and understand it. And ask yourself, am I confident? Am I worthy? Am I self-aware enough to admit my strengths and my weaknesses? Am I loving to myself? That first house, that Aries energy, is number 1 for a reason. It's the same thing as when Socrates said, know thyself. It's the same energy when you fly on an airplane and the flight attendant says, if you're flying with others, put your oxygen mask on first before you assist others. There's many cliches out there that repeat the message of self-awareness and the importance of being self-aware, being honest with ourselves. And so we have to get that in check before we can have the Libra energy. Because why? Because we're entering into all these relationships and we fall in love and we want to get married. And then when the elephant in the room shows up from both sides, we don't know what to do. Should we end this? Should we keep it going? Oh my God, is this self-sabotage? What elephant is showing up in the room of this relationship? We all bring our own elephants to the relationship. I love elephants, so I'm not talking about elephants in a bad way. I'm using it in this context that there's this huge obstacle in the relationship and nobody wants to talk about it. And those are the relationships that don't work out. What part of the elephant are you bringing to your relationships? Because if you're not being honest about the part you're bringing, then your relationship probably is not going that well. The best relationships I find for me is when we can be open and honest and talk about anything going on and admitting our strengths, admitting our weaknesses, telling people, apologizing to people. You know, I know we are not taught self-awareness in school, so we have to learn the hard way as humans. It's true. You know, we get into these relationships and that's when we start feeling pain. And we start feeling pain and despair and suffering. And we can fall madly in love with a person. And the relationship could be going so well and then the elephants in the room show up. True story. And either we work on them or we don't. And I can't tell you how many people I know that they meet these great people and then what happens is either they bring in the problem and won't work on it or the other party does or both of them do. I had a friend of mine and she's a beautiful girl and she has a lot of relationships. She attracts a lot of relationships. These guys, some of them are awesome. But she's not willing to admit that she has a drinking problem. And until she's willing to admit that, her relationships, she's always, they're not working out very well. They're working out as well as they can, but they would be so much better if she would admit that. It doesn't matter what the challenge is in a relationship. If we're not willing to admit it and look at it straight in the eyes and say, hey, I'm going to work this out because I don't want to lose you and I love you and I want to work together to make this Libra relationship go forward. So if you want better relationships, I'm going to make it real easy for you guys. It's a simple thing. You start working with your natal astrology chart and you start becoming self-aware. And by becoming self-aware, because you're studying your chart, or you're just looking at your chart, it's like your own personal Mandela. The more you look at it, the more you learn, and the more you become self-aware. And the better self-aware you are, the better you have better relationships. Because there's nothing worse than being in a relationship with someone who can't admit that they're the reason the relationship isn't working out. Those relationships suck, right? I was madly in love with my high school sweetheart, madly. Great connection. And we would connect and break up and connect over the years. And then he wanted me to move in with him, and he and I did. And guess what? About halfway into my stay, my length of my journey there with him, the discovery that he had some anger issues started to surface. And he didn't want to work on it, or he knew he had them. He knew he had it, anger issues, but he somehow couldn't get a handle on it. So he started to talk to a therapist, and that was good. And then what happened is he had anger issues already from some unresolved stuff in his childhood. But then he would go out and party, and guess what? He was one of those nasty drinkers, nasty drunks. And so he already had the anger issues, and then he would add fuel to the fire. And believe me, what came out of his mouth was very nasty and hurtful many times. Was I a saint in the relationship? No, not saying I was. But I gave him so many opportunities and chances to wake up to self-awareness, and he just couldn't seem to grasp it. I don't know why, but he finally did after I left. So I had to endure the pain of that relationship. I cried for days, grieving the loss of someone I was madly in love with, people you have history with. And it's so sad when you're madly in love with a person and they're madly in love with you, but they won't address the elephant in the room. So we all can help each other out and have better relationships by starting that self-awareness, that Aries journey early. Don't wait until, you're 50 years old and start it. Start it as early as you can, because you will have better relationships, and you will find you're not going to settle for relationships with people who can't go there. And so to me, having better relationships is kind of an easy thing. By looking at your natal chart and you start your self-awareness discovery. To me, it's always kind of been easy, but we make it so difficult. We make it so difficult as humans. And so many people have these great relationships, and then there's this really problem that shows up, and then nobody wants to work on it. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to look at it. And then the relationship ends. And then they keep repeating it and repeating. How many times do we want to repeat this stuff, you guys? How many times do we want to lose the love of our lives because we're not willing to do that Aries part of our chart? Self-awareness starts with us. Again, Socrates said, what did Socrates say? Know thyself. Yet so many of us don't know ourselves. We think we do, but we don't. We think we do, but when we get in relationships, that's when we really look at that stuff. You want better relationships in astrology, start with your natal chart, get that Aries self-confidence, self-awareness, and self-love in check first, then enter into your relationships. Take it from there. I wish you all harmonious, self-aware relationships. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.